Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a regular episode of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Tonight, we'll be interviewing two candidates, both running for City Council, one in District 3 and the other in District 4. But our first candidate tonight is a candidate for City Council District 3, which is the northeast portion of the city of Oxnard. A lifelong resident of the city of Oxnard and an active member in his neighborhood council of East Village as the secretary treasurer. He comes with experience in both municipal and federal government, putting to work his master's in public affairs with a dual concentration in local government management and public finance administration. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ronald Arruejo.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me with you.
Thank you, Ronald, for accepting the invitation and joining me in this conversation. I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
So, I think you may be a little overqualified for city council.
Well, I hope you tell the district that, please.
It's actually pretty amazing. As we spoke yesterday, we are pretty much the same age, and you have accomplished a lot, which is very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Awesome for that. So let's get right into it. We got a few questions to get going through, and I believe you also have a candidate forum tonight also. So
I don't actually. That's District 4. Yeah, District 3 is tomorrow. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification, and good luck for that for tomorrow.
Yep, thank you.
So let's see. What motivated you to run for office? Again, just that little part of your bio that I read, you have municipal and federal government experience. What motivated you to run for city council?
Yes, I first thought of running during the special election 2.5 years ago, as many citizens knew. The issues facing the city, getting the economy back, making sure that development was right, making sure that we are using the ideas that are already out there in our neighboring cities. One of the great things about Oxnard is that it is large, and so we should have some economic heft in terms of what we're going to be doing. Unfortunately, I don't see that leadership from some on council, just in regards to already using like cannabis in Port Hueneme. I know I harped on that during the forum last week. I actually can't use cannabis as a federal government employee, but I see that Port Hueneme, I think they made a smart gamble. They involved, or the police chief himself got involved, making sure to outline the safety criteria. And the city gambled and won, and they're going to be ahead of us no matter what Oxnard does, slow or fast. Unfortunately, it's slow right now. We'll catch up maybe in the next few years, but boy, could we have used that now, especially with COVID. So those are just a couple of the things that motivated me to run. If I could just delve into something, even before I got into politics, my parents, my mom in particular, when we lived in College Estates in South Oxnard, she kept on complaining to me, what are we going to be doing about rice? It's never being fixed, and I can delve into what my solutions will be for that. I actually called, and I actually tried to call all my representatives on the state and federal level. My state representatives never got back to me, but my U.S. representative at that time, Lois Capps, we were in a gerrymandered district just before 2010. And she said that it just seems that the scheduling and the money between the city, the county, and the state, the county for the portion of the one that's not in the city, were just never in sync. I tried to contact the city back then. I know it's different people, but that's been a little the impetus of why I got more into seeing what government can do no matter what. So being involved with UCLA student government, with Indiana University government, with Altoona, Wisconsin government, and now with the federal government, of course, a different beast. But that's a little bit of the history of how I came here today.
You know what? That's actually a perfect segue because your district actually encompasses that Rice Avenue, and it has been a long thorn in the city side as far as needing much needed repairs and repaving. Um, if elected to the city council, what are your plans to try to bring all of those different level of governments and sync them all together so um, that we can actually see some progress on Rice Avenue?
Yeah, the minimum thing that needs to be done is just communication with the residents. I think some would understand why nothing was being done or why there's only minor covering up of the road because Oxnard is not going to pay for all of it when it's partially owned by the state, and they need to schedule it with the county for the portion of Rice that turns into the one. Unfortunately, all of those things, the scheduling and the money have to be there. Sometimes we have 5 of the 6, but all 6 of the 6 need to be there in terms of budget and schedule for those 3 entities. I think that communication would at least alleviate some residents. I'm not going to say that I have the exact plan and solution, but honestly, communication, bad or good, is always better for the residents, because if you don't communicate, they're going to think even worse than what they're already thinking. I think I've done that with whatever in my workplace, and hopefully I'll be able to do that on council.
Sounds good. So, what are moving into this election? You know, you said that you had thought about running a couple of years ago in the special election. Now you're actually in an election during the presidential. What are your 3 priorities that you want to accomplish on the city council? And again, we can list over 100 different priorities, but I just want to narrow it down to the 3. And if you can elaborate on those 3 priorities.
Yes, of course. For those who have been following my campaign, they have seen through my emails or social media that my top 3 priorities: improving our infrastructure, working with local leaders, and investing in Oxnard's future. And I'll give a little bit of an example that is specific to each one, and that kind of goes throughout all of them. Every time I go into the district, the top 3 things, I'm not going to say it's the top, but one of them is definitely going to be what are we doing with the roads? Some remember that Measure O was passed in 2008. However, you see on slightly dated, and I say that very positively in that sense. If you look at the City of Oxnard website, the last 2016 community report shows that road repair was only the 5th funded priority. And I think when city council members or whoever was the proponents for this Measure O, road repair is always the thing that they were talking about. If it's the 5th priority, it's not really a priority. I think your priorities should be in the top 3. And so council is in charge of that. They've known about that at least since 2016. Looking at a 2019 report on fiscal year 18 expenditures, it was only 1 out of every $8. That is not a priority. I'm not saying it's going to be the most funded with Measure O funds in the future, or if Measure E passes, City Council will be in charge of that. But I'm letting the district know that it is going to be a higher priority. I will be talking about it more, and they'll see that my vote reflects that. In regards to working, I'm going to go on to my other 2 priorities, if you please. Working with local leaders. It is a great thing that the Sakioko Farms project development just off of Del Norte, for everyone who doesn't know, 438 acres, 5,000 minimum jobs. We need to be looking at how are we going to be leveraging that business space with the rest of the county? How are we making sure that not only is the local economic development there, but what I learned from my past supervisor, the city administrator of Altoona, people need to work to live, but they also want to play to stay. And Oxnard does have those great recreation areas. So we need to look at microbreweries. I mean, it's just on the 101. You know about the wineries in Santa Barbara. You know, there's lots of things in LA, but there's nothing, there's a burgeoning industry in Ventura County, and I think the Sakyoko Farms project would be an ideal place for it. In addition, there's the 101 expansion that's going to be happening, and we need to make sure that Del Norte Boulevard is going to be expanded to the capacity for in 10 to 20 years, not for the capacity that we think it's going to be in the 5 years. And that's working with local leaders, the businesses, the county, the state, and the residentials, and seeing that any of those consumer type businesses that retail type-ish businesses, that it's something that they would like to go and see. Obviously, we're going to cater to our Oxnard residents, but obviously we're getting from Port Hueneme, Camarillo, and Ventura. So I think that is something to look forward to. And, you know, there's a neighborhood development on the soon to be developed Del Sol High School. I think it's a good opportunity also to work with the school district in terms of visioning process. What are the types of houses that can be built around that area? I'm not saying that they're going to have money inputted, because that's a city responsibility, but it couldn't hurt to get their input because they've seen how the schools in the city, it's basically the same population in a lot of places, or mostly. And in regarding with investing in Oxnard's future, unfortunately, I think a lot of people would agree, even those on council, that we're paying for the mistakes from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, from 20 years ago. And, you know, with the, I think that the leadership being changed constantly, it doesn't look good. And we need to be making sure that there's decisions that are looking out for the interest of not just the present, but for everyone's children and grandchildren. You know, like, I thought it was pretty good when I was a kid, 15, 20, 25 years ago. I think the parents made the best that they could and gave me a good life there. And I want to make sure, having the opportunity to come back, that not only is it good right now, but it will be for my kids if I have them, and for everyone's kids in the future. Thank you for allowing me that expanded answer.
All of it sounds amazing, but I want to touch on that first priority of yours when you were talking about infrastructure. And that's kind of one of those hot topics, because you mentioned roads and you mentioned Measure O as well. And as you mentioned, Measure O was passed in 2008 by voters. And this year is actually one of the ballot measures is Measure N, which it has a kind of like a certain standard that Measure O needs to meet in order, well, let me back up, that the city needs to meet that ties Measure O in there. And it's pretty much saying that Measure N says that you have to meet certain standards for road conditions that Measure O money goes towards. If you do not meet those certain standards, then Measure O sunsets a lot sooner than what voters voted on. And that if you do meet them, you can do increments of 5 years as long as you want. Now, we also know that Measure O is a general tax, which means that it's allowed to be used for anything. What is your position on Measure N? And you can elaborate on your position as well.
Yeah, I briefly stated in last week's forum that if we want to have better streets, vote yes on E, vote no on N. What are we doing making, I don't want to say arbitrary, but it's very close to arbitrary measures in regards to the scoring of year by year? What's going to happen? Did we account for COVID and making sure that the funds are going to be coming in to get to that score? What happens if we're only 1 point below, or if we're 2 points below? the economy is sometimes a little of a boom and bust. And so sometimes we're going to be able to fund a little bit more to roads, and sometimes we won't be able to. And putting such, in my opinion, such a strict constriction on the city in regards to those funds, when not even all of those funds go to road repair, it's, you know, what's the term? It's cutting our nose in spite of our face, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. For one little thing, we're going to throw out everything out that could be working. Also for public safety, which does take the majority of Measure O funds, but then if we pass Measure N, nothing will go to street repair. And I don't think that the residents will like that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You also talk about investing in Oxnard, and you mentioned families and youth being able to return back to the community. Now, you know, as well as many other residents, that housing in California in general is very, very expensive. And in order to live in California and in the city of Oxnard, jobs need to be there. What are your plans to try to bring in those well-paying jobs? And when I mean well-paying jobs, I'm not just talking about salaries, but I'm also talking about that they provide benefits to their employees as well. What are your goals and plans to try to attract those businesses to Oxnard?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch first on the affordable housing part. You know, you see all of these developments being built around the city. I don't know the particular names, but they have been where the old Wagon Wheel project or River Park, and council, unfortunately, I'm going to say again, they dropped the ball in terms of trying to put some type of mandatory or some type of level of affordable housing. You know, with the neighborhood that will be surrounding the Del Sol High School Del Sol High School, I am going to be looking at affordable housing at a rate that was higher than past council's developments over the last 5 to 10 years. I'm not going to be saying it's going to be to a level that the governor is going to approve, but it's definitely going to be a step in the right direction. And I think that's something that we could have been doing in the last few years, and now we're making up. And so I think that the governor or any state agency, at least in regards to affordable housing, will see that we are making at least incremental steps to address affordable housing. And so I'm not going to be NIMBY and say there's going to be no affordable housing, but I'm going to compromise and say that there will be affordable housing, whatever in terms of apartments or duplex, quadplex, that is going to be at a greater rate than the council ever approved in all their previous developments for however long they've been on council. In regards to jobs, you know, I will give a vote to the council in regards to the Sac-Yoka Farms project. I'm glad that it was approved, but we need to be making sure that the right types of businesses are there. Not to go too much into theory, but in Altoona, there was a vacant land property similar to the Sac-Yoka Farms project. It was called River Prairie, not to be confused, of course, with River Park in North Oxnard. And they built from the ground up, making sure to put in a concept called placemaking, in which there are several types of businesses to cater to people. Because when you go somewhere, you want options. And so hopefully we're not going to just put one big thing. There could be a big thing in there, but we need to be diversifying what is going to be there. So if people want to go to the movies, I mean, obviously we have the River Park, and then you can go somewhere else. So a mixture of some establishments there. We're going to be getting some people from Western Camarillo who will be going to this place in Eastern Oxnard. I think that's going to be a great place in terms of play and recreation and for consumer spending. And I think that all helps in regards to getting good and better paying jobs. Like I said before, people need to work to live, but they also need to play to stay.
Great. And staying on the topic with housing, there has been a lot of calls for rent control and there are many people that believe that high rents are forcing people or forcing communities to actually have an increase of homelessness. What is your position and approach towards rent control as well as homelessness?
Well, right now, we need to be looking at the effects of the recently passed state law in 2019. I'm not exactly sure of the title, but it was passed that did have some type of rent control. I believe it was 5% over the CPI index by some calculation. I believe that's actually pretty robust when you compare it to the rest of the country. We don't have that information in regards to how good or how bad it is. I believe that it's good. I believe that it might even be too aggressive in some steps. And so when the economy gets back to order in the next 1 to 3 years, hopefully in the next year, we'll be able to see those effects and really look and analyze what that law was able to do in regards to lowering or at least keeping the level of increases to a more manageable level. And so I want to look for another couple of years to see the effect of the state law. And I am open to something in the future in the next probably minimum 2 to 5 years that Oxnard could do. But, you know, coming from the Midwest for a few years, they barely have any rent control in their places. We need to see what happens with California. And I think that it might even already be a good step, but unfortunately with COVID, it messes up with the analyzation, and we need to see. We can't have a knee-jerk reaction every year. Let's give it a couple of years, but I am open to it.
And the homeless?
I'm sorry, what in particular with homeless? Oh,
what is your approach to address homeless in the city of Oxnard?
Yeah, you know, we have Port Hueneme and Oxnard, basically one large city, I like to call it sometimes. And one of the candidates there, Missy Perez, actually commented that there could be some type of development in Port Hueneme or somewhere in that area that could cater to both. And so we don't have to be duplicating efforts in Port Hueneme and Oxnard. Obviously, Oxnard would maybe, since it has more land, it's going to be carrying the load of the administrative costs and the funding. But I think Port Hueneme, especially with their cannabis revenue, with their development agreements that they said that they would be donating to homeless, I think that would be a great way to have partnership working with local leaders. And that's one way to do that. I know that we're doing that in some fashion. It'd be great to have it more formalized.
Now, I know we've talked about businesses, we've talked about housing, and I want to get to a measure that's on Oxnard's ballot this year, which is Measure F, which is to expedite permitting or simplicity permitting. And it is really focused on the building permitting, not the planning. What is your position on Measure F?
Yes. Right now, as I see the facts, this was actually the toughest for me to decide. And right now, if you don't have all the information and you don't feel as comfortable with what you think it's going to do, you have to vote no. And so unless some new information comes to light, I'm going to stick with planning on no. I looked at the other cities with similar types of plans that were proposed by the proponent of the measure, and it doesn't seem that it's getting the results that they wanted in regards to the efficiency and to lowering costs, that people are not taking advantage of it. And so I think the safety concerns are a little bit weighing on me in regards to that. And not enough economic benefits. So yes, if people want to say that I'm on the record of no, yes, I'm on the record as no.
Thank you for that. Now, Another measure that I want to touch on is Measure L, and I'm going to tap into your finance administration degree. Now, Measure L is increasing city treasurer's powers. It's a combination of an elected city treasurer and the appointed chief financial officer, the CFO. What are your feelings on that measure?
Absolutely no. You are putting all of financial and other administrative and oversight ability into one elected person for 4 years. I I kind of shudder at that because there have been, unfortunately, some problems with the treasurer position, even currently, as some people know from reading the news. I I can't say I've ever seen such a conglomeration of financial duties in just one person, especially in city government. And even as running a business, you want to have a little bit more diversification of duties to make sure that there's some self-auditing in that sense. Obviously, there's going to be the regular auditing that the city does, but working in student government, working in city government, working in federal government, wow, that's a lot in an elected position. I could be more open to it if it's an appointed position, but no, I am. I'm. It's one of. I'm very confident in voting no on no.
As someone who currently lives in the northeast portion of the city of Oxnard and who formerly lived in South Oxnard, you know as well as I do that they're both very high populated areas. Now, being in the northeast corner of the city, what are your plans to try to build more community involvement, knowing that this community is very high density?
Yes, I think one of the minimum things that needs to be done is the communication with the residents. When I go out into the district, uh, it seems that the city only contacts them or messages them when there's some type of problem. We need to be more proactive and not assuming that all the residents are keeping up to date with every council or committee meeting. Um, in terms of with working with local leaders, I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I hope, when COVID passes, that there's going to be some type of involvement of the city council with the school districts that happen to be overlapping with the city. At a very young age, we can get people, I'm not even going to say involved, just knowing about city and local government, knowing about the county. And so it'd be great if the school district and the city do something a little bit more formalized in terms of just some type of orientation, or have the students be on the city council for a day. Obviously, there's not going to be anything binding. I think those are some of the ways that I see that we can look at the long term in regards to infusing that idea of civic mindedness for the young people and looking out for the future. In regards to now, hopefully there's going to be a neighborhood council in each place. I have been very fortunate to have Paul Hankey as the chair, who has, when we have the neighborhood cleanups, it's so great to see people come out, and we're so happy that City Corps comes out. Those kids are awesome. And we were able to do that every 6 to 9 months. And we were able to tell them it's, being administrated by neighborhood council, but the city of Oxnard and the City Corps are doing a lot of the financial and legwork. I would like to build off of that. I know that there have been neighborhood council meetings in La Colonia. I know that there are already in Rose Park, but that's looking at those local leaders, whoever wants to step up and making sure that the city is going to have more input and more hands-on, instead of just letting them be and hoping that they do the best.
Now, your district is ultimately surrounded by a lot of farmlands. And over the past few years, it has become a little bit more apparent by local organizations that are calling for the end of harmful pesticides around the farmlands that ultimately surround low-income neighborhoods. What is your approach to try to ensure that Oxnard has a safer, healthier, more environmental friendly future?
Well, we need to be, I understand that's happening, and to make sure that we have a stance and an argument, we need to have the science to back that up. And I'm pretty sure that there are reports. So we need to be showing what are the negative effects that are happening to the residents of Oxnard. Um, when you see all that bad publicity, um, I think that's one way to go at it. Um, so I think that making sure that there is data to back up um, in regards to the negative and harmful effects of pesticides, um, I think that's definitely something that the city should be leading on.
Now, I want to ask you on the last measure that we haven't touched on, which is Measure M, and it talks about city meeting procedural rules. And as someone that comes with both municipal and federal government experience, what are your feelings on Measure M and the approach that the city has taken over the past couple of years with the Sunshine Ordinance, putting out agendas and staff reports 12 days before the city council meeting and 7 days before a council committee meeting?
Yes. Of all the measures, I am the most confident of voting no on Measure M. Let me explain, as someone who's actually worked within city administration, as someone who's presented in front of council multiple times, in front of the committee meetings also multiple times. The staff needs to have the flexibility to make sure that they have all the information, updated information for both council, for the committee, for staff, and possibly for the media. And this, again, unnecessary restriction, although the intent might seem good in terms of course, opening up transparency, you're putting a lot of barriers on what city council can do. And I think the best way is to make sure that you have a mayor who's going to chair the council or whatever chair of the committee to make sure that there is that transparency and accountability to the citizens. Looking at that, the video cost that's going to be happening, that time and amount that's going into that, all that editing, I think the city has actually done really good in terms of putting all of that out before it's really mandated to be there. There's going to be some emergency situations where they may not be able to, and of course they have levers to pull in regards to doing that. But city staff has a hard job trying to get everything that they need and conforming to all the regulations that are required. The public can always ask the city staff some extra information. I know that has happened a few times. We don't have something similar, but I remember someone talking about de-annexing from a city. There's not really procedure for that here in Oxnard or in California, not to my knowledge, but I was able to give him information in regards to that. We had, citizens can bring up topics and they can be put on the agenda and they can have input to the process instead of just 2 weeks before. A lot can happen in 2 weeks, 12 days, but basically it's 2 weeks. If any of the measures have a vote, it's definitely no on Measure M. I'm very sure on that.
So let me ask you, because you're a lifelong resident, you have seen the multiple changes that our community has gone through. You come with experience from other local governments and the federal government. what do you see as Oxnard's biggest challenge, and how do you address that challenge?
You know, I really think it's making sure that people think there's a future for them in Oxnard, that they're not just here to work, but they're going to have a family here. You know, one of the things that got me back to California, and I did touch on it at the forum last week, is that my dad is not in the best of health. And so being able to come back, and I can't believe I'm able to come back into the city just with how my job is. Um, you know, family is probably the most important for everyone. Making sure that the schools are there. Obviously, we don't have input into the school funding or their priorities. Working with them, working with local leaders, making sure that we're looking into the future beyond our terms or beyond our term limits. Um, I actually, you know, just 2 or 3 years ago, I never thought I would go into politics or at least in anything this public. When I was a kid, I was so shy. But looking at what government can and cannot do, that got me out of my bubble to do something for whatever community I've been involved in. That has been with registering voters at UCLA with student government. That's been tutoring high school math at the local high school when I was in grad school, as being an assistant catechist at the local church in Wisconsin where I live. And that was being here involved with the neighborhood council. There was something in it for my family and for my community, and just seeing what it can do in their lives. I thought it was a little bit something that I can contribute. I hope their city and city council will be making actions that will have people want to contribute to Oxnard. Obviously, it doesn't mean just funds or finances, their time or their emotions, and talking about Oxnard to other people, that it is a great place to live. It's not just people working, it has beaches. It's the largest city, and so it has a lot of say in this county. And I want the citizens and the district to know that you have a lot of say. And with me on council, you'll have a say for a long time, whether my term, however long my term is, because I'll always be looking to invest in Oxnard's future.
Thank you, Ronald. That's is absolutely amazing. And one of the items that you touched on was family and how important that is. And any candidate and elected official will tell you that family is truly one of the most important things in anybody's life. So first of all, thank you for being here in this conversation with me.
Thank you.
And I am going to allow you the opportunity to go ahead and say any final words that you have. You can promote your website, social media pages, and any other information that you want the public to know about you and your campaign.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel, for having me here. I just want to let everyone know that City Council does not have to be the same as it's always been. You can have a new and fresh voice, unencumbered by the dated practices of the past, always looking for ways to make the best for Oxnard's short and long-term future, and always ready and willing to work with everyone, council members, city, state, school, and your local family too. Please vote for me. I'm #1 on the ballot, and hopefully I'll be your #1 choice. Please visit me at Arruejo for Oxnard if you need any more information. I am always happy to have a call, Zoom, and I have been having lots of emails and impromptu conversations as I've been door hanging my attempt to go to every single address in the district. So thank you very much, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Ronald. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ronald Arruejo, who is a candidate for District 3, which is the northeast portion of the city of Oxnard. Neighborhoods are West Village, La Colonia, Rose Park, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple of others.
Yeah, East Village and Rio Lindo.
East Village and Rio Lindo.
No problem at all. Yeah, so, 43, I think, 40 plus to remember, so yes.
So thank you, Ronald, again for joining me in this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please be sure to visit his website at Arruejo, the word for F-O-R, Oxnard.com, or his social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Arruejo, the number 4, Oxnard. This has been Oxnard Live. Thank you again, Ronald, for joining me tonight, and good luck tomorrow in your forum with the League of Women Voters. That's always a good forum with Dave Murrin. He's always a very good moderator. So good luck with that, and good luck with your campaign as well.
Thank you, and I hope you have me again later this month, time permitting. But if not, I totally understand. Thank you very much again.
Of course, I will be bringing all the candidates back in the near future. But don't worry, you will come back. If I lived in District 3, best believe I would actually vote for you. This is your information that you provided is really, really spot on, and it's realistic information. And that's really what we need in the city of Oxnard. It's realistic, not fantasies, but realistic goals and objectives to reach. So awesome work on that. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Oxnard Live. We are 100% real and live. Please be sure to stick around. In 15 minutes, we'll be having Lucy Cartagena, who is a council candidate for District number 4. Her interview will be starting at 5 o'clock. Once again, that was Ronald Arruejo. Please visit his website, Arruejo, the number 4, F-O-R, Oxnard.com, or his social media pages.
Oh, the word, sorry, Arruejo, the word for Oxnard.com. Apologies, thank you.
No, thank you for the clarification. And his social media pages, which is the number 4, not the word 4. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll see you guys soon in 15 minutes with Lucy Cartagena for District 4 City Council. Thank you again, Ronald.
Bye, everyone. Thank you again, Daniel.